So, how do you feel now about the prospect of it happening?
I think it's happening slowly. I mean, now finally.
Jonathan Coe, the book is called Middle England. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
28 minutes past 8. Time for the sport, and here's Jonathan Ledger.
Morning again. If only England's cricketers could remain at the crease in Gaul in Sri Lanka. Two England batsmen were making a stand. Wickets clattered in the morning session. 113 for 5 at lunch. But in keeping with that innings, correspondent Jonathan Agnew has news of another wicket.
Yes, indeed, I have since you were last. It's a shame, really, because actually Joss Butler had played so well. It took a good low catch by Dick Waller, the wicketkeeper, to end his innings of 38 after a stand of 61 with Ben Foakes, who's playing his first Test match. Both showing exactly the right sort of discipline and patience that's required for these conditions, which are not challenging. Earlier, Jennings out for 46, Burns 9, Mowing first ball, Root 35, Stokes 7, and most recently then Butler for 38. The captain, Chandimal, has hobbled off with a groin strain, so perhaps have some news of that later on during the day. But at the moment, England are 174 for 6.
Thank you, Jonathan. So much for the bolder, different formula that Captain Joe Root was talking about in the build-up to the match. Let's talk to one of his illustrious predecessors, David Gower. Good morning, David.
Jonathan, good morning to you.
It's not a great morning if you're an England fan. Were they wrong to hope for a new top order to function, or was this entirely predictable, what Jonathan's just been talking about?
Neither. I think from what I've heard and a little bit of what I've seen, first of all, for instance, take the example of Joe Root, who settled in very quickly, seemed to be playing very nicely, and then got himself out is the easy answer by doing something we've all done at some stage of our careers, albeit I have to go back a long time to remember mine. And that's the trouble. If you win the toss at Gaul, you obviously bat first. One of the things that they'll be clinging on to at this stage, because it hasn't gone as well as it should have done, is that the ball is not going to turn less over the next 2 or 3 days. It's going to turn more. And one thing that England had probably done right in this game is picked more than enough spinners. So, they will have a chance to redeem themselves with the ball. And of course, we haven't finished yet with the bats. Quite nice to see Ben Foakes going well, because he's been on the fringe for so many years now that both to get a chance and to be into the mid-30s now, I think for him is a great start to a Test career.
And it's good to see someone showing technique and application, because so many people, Jonathan was saying this earlier in the programme, that they're just getting themselves out again and again, headless batting. Well,
Jonathan, I'm going to have to channel my inner Jeffrey here. It's concentration. I mean, it's never better emphasised than in a game like this against a side like Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka. That you might be playing a large diet of spin, but you have to concentrate furiously, because for instance, Butler's dismissal, having played so nicely, he just misjudged the length. He goes back, not forward. A simple prop forward, and that's not rugby, by the way, he'd have been absolutely fine. And it's judging every ball, which is the hard work against spin. I mean, it's one thing playing huge pace, and that has its own problems, but you're not going to get that in Sri Lanka. So in Sri Lanka, you need to work out how to pretty much judge every ball on its merit, play it, and still be positive. So I admire I think the planning has been pretty good, actually. I think the planning's about right, and the attitude's probably right. But it's the other word that comes up so often nowadays, it's the execution.
Yes. Are they going to turn this around? Lost 10 of the last 13 away Tests, England, in a short answer, David?
Well, okay, short answer is maybe. I cannot give you much more than a maybe on
Perfect. That is brilliant. Superb. That's the best answer ever, I think, when someone says briefly. David Gower, thank you very much indeed. And you can see David, by the way, he's going on tour. Can you believe this? Solo live performances. Do you want to make a Test debut, or do you want to go live on tour talking about your Test career? David Gower will be doing that from March 2019. Just to say one other thing, just a boost, shall we, of my English cricketers. The success story of the morning came at the Melbourne Cup, where British horses recorded an unprecedented 1, 2, 3. Cross count of the first ever British winner of the event, owned by Sheikh Mohammed's Godolphin operation and traded at Newmarket by Charlie Appleby. Marmelo was second and a Prince of Arran was third. Look out for Champions League football tonight. 5 Live will have all the coverage. And our 2 racing selections: Redcar 4:05, number 7, Someone Exciting; Kempton 7:30, number 7, Rude Report.
Thank you, Jonathan. The weather is going to be cloudy and damp in the west, and it'll be windy later with some...
Explain their behaviour, leading her to conclude that their illness really is all in the mind. Join me, Jamal Khalili, for the Life Scientific after the news at 9.
You're listening to Today on Radio 4 with Justin Webb and Michelle Hussein. It's 27 minutes to 9, and Susan Ray has a summary of the news.
Americans will go to the polls today and deliver their verdict on President Trump's last 2 years in office. Turnout is expected to be high as Republicans and Democrats vie for control of Congress. Last night, American television networks refused to broadcast one of Mr. Trump's final campaign adverts after judging it to be racist. 5 men have been arrested on suspicion of a public order offence after a video was posted online showing a model of Grenfell Tower being set alight during a bonfire party. The men handed themselves into a police station in South London last night. A 16-year-old boy has died in a suspected stabbing in South London. He's the 119th person to be murdered in the capital this year. A study by British scientists suggests women who are early risers are nearly 50% less likely to develop breast cancer than those who stay up late. Researchers say the reasons are unclear. A BBC investigation suggests that a shortage of radiographers is having a serious...
5 to 9. Universities that cannot sustain themselves financially should not and will not be bailed out, so says the chair of the new regulator, the Office for Students. It comes amid reports that 3 universities are on the verge of bankruptcy. Well, before we speak to Sir Michael Barr, chairman of the Office for Students, Branwen Jeffries, our education editor, is on the line. How credible are these reports of potential bankruptcy, Branwen?
Well, I think they should be taken with a pinch of salt in the sense of any immediate crisis. Of the 182 institutions already registered with the Office for Students in England, that's universities, FE colleges, small arts institutions, not one of them has a financial warning notice attached. I think that there will be people who think universities are too big to fail, they're too high profile. And if we apply a political reality check to that, there is a degree of truth in that. It's very hard to see a large institution being allowed to fail. A smaller one, the more likely scenario might be that we see some kind of merger or takeover. It's worth bearing in mind, Michelle, that for several years there was a...
Thank you very much. And listening to that in the studio is Sir Michael Barr. Good morning.
Morning.
Are you saying this because you are concerned that perhaps not immediately there are financial problems within our universities?
Well, the first thing to say, is, as Branwen just said, is we've registered 182 universities so far in this new registration process under the new legislation, and not one of them has a financial warning notice. That doesn't mean there won't be some by the end of the process. We'll complete the process by the end of this year, and there may be some then, but I can't put a number on that. But overall, it's a financial sector that's in good financial health. But the reason I'm saying this now, and very firmly and very clearly and without any hesitation, is I want people who are on governing councils of universities or are vice chancellors and management teams of universities to make decisions on the basis that they are autonomous institutions and they take responsibility for their decisions. If they run into the financial difficulties, we will not bail them out.
And no one is too big to fail.
No one is too big to fail, and we've seen in the banking sector the consequences of believing that ultimately somebody will step in and bail us out. We're not going to do that.
But imagine that scenario does develop where a university looks like it is going to actually have to close their doors. I mean, yours is the Office for Students. How would that serve the students? I mean, wouldn't there be a duty on you at that point to at least consider how the government might be able to help out?
Well, you're quite right to draw attention to our name, and our objective all the time will be to protect and promote the interests of students, of all students, open to students in that case. Quite granular. Students on this course would have these options to complete their study, and we will ensure that for every student, in the case of a university getting into difficulty, for every student there is a clear pathway to the completion of their studies.
When you say granular,
I'm not saying it won't be difficult for the students.
But by saying granular, you're suggesting it could be quite detailed. So do you mean these students could
partway through a formal legal process of registration?
Handful, dozens.
I'm not going to speculate. I know it's tempting,
but it's important, isn't it? Because students, for example, are going to look around universities at this time of year, thinking about next year and beyond.
Let me put it in the positive. The vast majority of institutions are financially sustainable, doing a wonderful job. We have a fantastic
A cap on energy bills. Well, that is finally happening. This morning, the price cap has been set, and Dominic is here to tell us how much it is.
It will be, wait for it, on average £1,137 a year. This affects about 11 Nolan from Ofgem.
Thanks, Dominic. 16 minutes to 9. Nearly a week after Pakistan's Supreme Court acquitted a Christian woman imprisoned on a charge of blasphemy, she has still not been reunited with her family. There are fears for Asia Bibi's life after hardline Islamic groups protested against her and threatened violence against the judges. The government of Prime Minister Imran Khan is allowing those groups to challenge the judgment. I asked Akbar Ahmed, Professor of Islamic Studies at Washington, D.C.'s American University and a former Pakistani High Commissioner to the UK. What was happening?
I think on one level it's a very confusing scenario, lots of murkiness, grey areas. On another level, it's crystal clear to me, at least, because I'm seeing this through the tragic case of Asia Bibi, the dramatic clash of the two opposed ideas of Pakistan. The idea of Pakistan inspired by Mr. Jinnah, a liberal Pakistan, open-minded.
And there have been several offers of asylum for Asia Bibi. Why can't the government of Pakistan accept those and get her out of the country now that the highest court in the land has ruled in her favour?
Yes, strategically it would be the most sensible thing if she was taken out of Pakistan and brought to England or some Western country which will offer her asylum, where she can be safely kept and allowed to lead a normal life. But again, I think there's so much pressure on the Pakistan government at all levels. I think the Western governments need to understand how pervasive this sentiment had become, because the mob had very successfully converted a case of such injustice that it was horrifying to anyone who knew the case, and I've been studying it and following it. But on another level, they had equated this case with the loyalty or the love of the Prophet of Islam and Islam itself, so that they were prepared to condemn the three justices who decided the case to acquit her. In fact, they asked the bodyguard, the armed guard who protect the justices, to commit murder and murder them, like the murder of the governor of the Punjab a couple of years ago.
The time is 11 minutes to 9. A final thought now about the American midterm elections. We've heard from a Republican congressman who told us Donald Trump was not a racist but a unifier. We heard from Tim Kaine, Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016, who told us the Republic itself is under threat if the Republicans are seen to win this election. Let's talk to Michael Lewis, author, best-selling author of The Big Short, Moneyball, Liar's Poker, etc., who's written a book about Donald Trump's first few months in office and about a deeper aspect of American life too. It's called The Fifth Risk, Undoing Democracy. Michael Lewis, morning to you.
Morning to you.
And the case you're making, people make all manner of cases, don't they, about the damage that Donald Trump is doing in their view, but your case is specifically about kind of governance, if I can put it like that, in the country.
And it arises from a kind of a critical difference between our government and your government, that our government's actually run by political appointees. And when he rolls in, he's supposed to appoint 4,000 people to manage the government. There's not a permanent civil service that does it. And the degree of neglect, I mean, it was so interesting they got me to write a book about the federal government, which had never occurred. It never occurred.
Not an obvious subject, is it? It was a best
subject at all. But I mean, you've got to appreciate this, because the Obama administration, like the Bush administration before it, had spent the better part of 6 months, 1,000 people preparing briefings across the government for, everything from like how do you manage a Zika virus if it comes into the United States to how you manage the nuclear arsenal. It's not ideological. And the day after the election, the Trump people are meant to roll in and receive these briefings. Hundreds of people are meant to be there, and nobody shows up, to the point where even just a few months ago, I'm getting pretty critical briefings being given to me that have never been given before.
Which is staggering. And the case you're making is damaging, not just during the course of the Trump presidency, but potentially much more damaging for much longer.
No question that this is what's happening beneath the noise of politics, the absence of governance, and I think it's a byproduct of the American people just not really appreciating anymore what their government does. It's been 40 years of abuse heaped upon it, and what people don't realize is essentially its job is to keep us safe, like your government's job its basic function is to keep you safe.